How come I can be so lazy and have zero discipline and zero willpower, but at the same time, I can run for 10, 20, 30 hours in a row, 100 hours even, being incredibly tired and thirsty and hungry and whatever you want, and not quit and keep going. If I'm so lazy, I could just quit. And I struggled for years trying to understand what's the difference. And it's not just motivation. Sometimes we say, oh, it's a motivation. That's just not enough. And that's how I put my finger on it and realized, yeah, it's a matter of commitment. Whatever I'm committed to, truly, I can do. And I can really move mountains and move across mountains as well, specifically for me. But if I'm not fully committed, there's no way. It could be something as easy as, turning off my phone at 11 or just getting out of bed at 7 a.m. in the morning, even at 8. If I'm not committed to it, I may just skip because deep down there's a small voice in my head that says, what if you don't? Just don't do it.
Welcome back to the Adventure Reignition Podcast. Today, I have a very special guest, a big adventurer, Martin Perrier. Martin is a professional ultra runner with an acquired taste for all things impossible. He notably finished third at the Tour des Géants in 2024, which is a race of 330 kilometers and 24,000 meters of elevation around the Aoste Valley. Pretty impressive, even for a runner like me. He has written a very powerful book about personal commitment to help people tune in with their inner champion and change any life habit. He's also working on that same topic as a personal coach, consultant, and corporate speaker. Martin, welcome to the show.
Hi, Blaise. Thanks a lot for having me.
Let's dive straight into the book that you wrote that has a name called You Have My Word. I want to understand a bit more of the origin of the book because you mentioned in the book many times that your life mission is about personal commitment and telling how to use it to change your life, basically. So tell me about how you came up with the book in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely. You did mention that. That's kind of my, my specialty and my life's purpose or mission to share the power of personal commitment, the way that I experienced it a few years ago, and the way that I kind of thought about it with my own experience and found a way to share it with as many people as possible. Personal commitment for me is the ability to commit to what you said you would do. It doesn't matter about how ambitious you are or what you want to do or what is the intention behind it. It's really how to turn that intention into a reality by just saying, I give you my word. You have my word as the title of the book. Je m'y engage in French. The idea here is to speak something into existence by not only putting the words, but then putting the actions that go with it. And that's essential in ultra running. When I'm running for 300K in the mountain, you need to be committed to reaching the finish line. Otherwise, there's no way that you can actually make it. And that's what inspired me to go and write this, to help people kind of understand how their brain work and then how to change any life habit through the power of personal commitment.
And at the beginning of the book, you wrote something that really struck with me, is that you've been constantly battling the concept of discipline, willpower, and motivation for years. And you said something that I personally experience a lot, is that you said you could be very strong to stay in your couch instead of going for a run. And I talk a lot about adventure in my podcast, in my content. And I think I do that also part because I need to force myself to kind of like throw myself into adventure, because otherwise I'm the world champion staying in my couch. So can you tell us a bit the kind of like the beginning of you to implementing the whole concept of personal commitment for yourself and how you were at the beginning of it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's easy to think when you see somebody who's an adventurer, especially an elite athlete and in ultra running, where I'm running for days on end. It's easy to think, oh yeah, but that comes easy for that person because they're just addicted to running, or they just it's easy for them to get up and go, and they don't struggle with the same thing as we do on a daily basis, for example. But it's not at all my own experience. I usually describe myself as half lazy and half hyperactive. So yeah, when you get me started on something that I'm truly passionate about, and you want me to, say, hey, let's wake up at 4 a.m. and go run in the mountain. Yeah, sure, I can go for hours and days on end. However, if there's nobody to offer me something exciting like this, I might just go, no, I'm going to stay on my couch for a very long time. I can't tell you how many times I skipped a workout that I promised myself I would do. I say, no, I'm going to work out tomorrow morning. Impossible. I cannot get out of bed or out of my couch because I am really that lazy. And that's why I struggled to understand for years. What is the difference? How come I can be so lazy and have zero discipline and zero willpower, but at the same time, I can run for 10, 20, 30 hours in a row, 100 hours even, being incredibly tired and thirsty and hungry and whatever you want, and not quit and keep going? If I'm so lazy, I could just quit. And I struggled for years trying to understand what's the difference. And it's not just motivation. Sometimes we say, oh, it's a motivation. That's just not enough. And that's how I put my finger on it and realized, yeah, it's a matter of commitment. Whatever I'm committed to, truly, I can do, and I can really move mountains and move across mountains as well, specifically for me. But if I'm not fully committed, there's no way. It could be something as easy as turning off my phone at 11 or just getting out of bed at 7 a.m. in the morning, even at 8. If I'm not committed to it, I may just skip, because deep down there's a small voice in my head that says, what if you don't? Just don't do it. And that's that commitment is the difference between, no, I said I would and I will, and I'm fully committed to doing it. If I don't have that, then screw this. There's just a small voice in my head that says, don't do it. And then I won't.
That's very interesting. And that's come up with my next question. My audience is a lot of creators and adventurers, or at least some of people who want to start doing this more. And what's the difference between, oh, I have the intention to create content online, for example, and the proper commitment? Because I think you didn't mention it, but that's what you talk about when you mean the difference between I really do it instead of like the intention. What's the difference?
Yeah, that's a core idea at the start of my book, is really that difference between an intention and a commitment. An intention is something you want to do that you may speak out loud. The absolute best example are the New Year resolution, right? It's like, oh, it's in January, I'm going to start exercising, or I'm going to quit smoking or drinking, or the dry January, or the whatever it is. All those resolutions that we have for January. There's sometimes that we have for the beginning of a month, for the beginning of a week, for whatever. And this is good. That's an intention. That means there's something that you want to do. And same when you want to start a business, when you want to start any type of project, right? But then what's the difference between some intention that stays at this level of just an intention, and after a few days or a few weeks, you just quit, and something that you actually turn into a commitment that is going to be long lasting and that will allow you to make that sustainable change? And that for me, I sum it up in like 3 words, what I call the commitment equation. So the commitment equation says commitment equals intention plus priority minus excuses. So you need that intention from the start. When people actually tell me, oh, how can I use your method to have my kid or my boyfriend or my wife quit smoking, for example, or start exercising, I always answer the same thing. You cannot make somebody do what they don't want to do. So you need that intention from the start. If somebody comes to me and say, I really want to quit smoking or start exercising or learn Spanish or whatever it is, I know I can help them commit to do that. But they need to really want it. So there needs to be that intention. Otherwise, drop it. It's never going to work. So you need that intention, but that's not enough. That's just a good resolution, right? So the intention, then you need to make it a priority. So intention plus priority. if you're willing to make it a priority, that already goes way above everything else that you may have in your life that's a lower priority. If you want to read half an hour every day, you're going to have to remove half an hour of what you're currently doing in your day to find that half hour to read. So that's what it means. Doesn't mean it is the absolute priority. Doesn't have to be the first thing you do in the morning, but you're going to have to find that half hour. And sometimes people say, I'm going to start reading half an hour every day, but they don't think about what they're going to have to deprioritize in order to read. So that's essential to be able to make it a priority. And when I'm asking somebody, are you willing to make it a priority? If the answer is no, then it's just the end of it. Don't even try. I'm usually telling them, don't even try. They're a bit surprised because they're thinking, I'm going to motivate them and inspire them. No, if they're not willing to make it a priority, I said, don't try because you are going to fail. You just cannot create half an hour out of thin air. So if you're not willing to change one of the half hours that are currently in your day, it's just not going to happen. So it has to be an intention, and you have to make it a priority. And then you have to say no to excuses. So intention plus priority minus excuses. If you're willing to find excuses, you're always going to find one. Always. And usually a good one. But with those excuses, that's how we never change anything. So there's always a reason, oh yeah, but I had to stay late at work, or oh yeah, the phone call from my friend, or I was really tired, I couldn't go to the gym, and I couldn't do my reading, If you truly make it a priority and you refuse to find excuses, and of course, I'm not talking about the real exceptional circumstances. If you have a car accident, okay, sure, you can skip the gym tonight, But apart from that, even if you have a cold, does having a cold mean that you cannot just read a book or maybe go to the gym instead of doing a hard workout? You're just going to do half an hour of stretching or yoga or whatever. So that really is the key, is to move from an intention to a commitment. Is intention plus priority minus excuses equals commitment with a capital C.
I love this. And I had a burning question throughout the whole book. And I think, when you say something like, yeah, you don't accept excuses, I see where it's coming from. But it made me think sometimes a bit of the hardworking person who never miss a practice or miss a reading time, for example. And I think this is the opposite, because a high achiever, for example, is going to be easy on that, commit to everything. But there are a percentage of people who will talk about self-love and taking care of yourself. So where is the balance between, okay, I commit to doing this and I'm going for it, but when is it too much, too strong? And then where you have to maybe put more self-care or self-love in the picture? Because the more I hear people talking about it, the more I'm confused about, should I commit or should I take care of myself?
I would say both. The answer to this is you should commit to taking care of yourself. And that's all that I'm about in this book, is really about living how you want to do it. So here the question is more about the intention. What's the intention and why are you doing things? And this is kind of the step right before where my book comes into play, right? My book doesn't help you decide what you want to do. It helps you stick to what you said you're going to do. Now, the whole point also of my book is really practical, is to get people to experience this power of commitment and to adjust things along the way, right? So the idea is to get started with a specific habit that you want to create. And then after a few weeks or a few months, usually a month is a good time already to kind of have a first review. And then you look, hey, no, that was a lot of reading, but that did not allow me to kind of rest and do whatever I wanted to do. So then you adjust. Instead of doing it every single day, maybe you go to 4 days a week, because then it allows you to maybe take some time thinking about yourself, maybe scroll a little bit on social media if that's something that you enjoy, because it helps you relax. Could be. So the idea is to always refine your commitment and to try to know what is the best thing for you to do. And you gave an interesting example with all the achievers and people who are very disciplined, right? There's a lot of people, especially in sports, And you can see that a lot in triathlon, in Ironman, for example. It's people, men or women, who are going to be high achiever at work and who are going to, on top of their 40, 50 hours of work every week, they're going to add 20 or 30 hours of training. And those people, where my book comes in handy, is not in helping them get the discipline to work out more, because they are easily doing that. They don't have any problem getting their workout clothes and get to on their bike or running or in the pool. However, what they struggle with is actually taking a rest. Having a rest day for a high achieving athlete, that sounds like a nightmare at times. It's like, no, I can't. I have to be doing something. Otherwise, I'm going to lose everything that I've been training for. And for those people, the commitment is about taking that day off. So when I'm working with an athlete like this, the idea is, okay, how much rest do you need? And they might say, oh, I would need to rest at least one day a week because I can see that I'm getting too tired otherwise. But they're still going to do it because they're a bit addicted. So then that's where the commitment comes in. And I ask them to give me their word. You have my word, again, the title, that they will be taking one day off. So for some people, commitment is about committing to do more. If you feel like I have to do more, but if you feel like I have to do less, then commitment has to be about doing less, taking more rest, more time for self-care, for self-love. So really it's about finding that balance, and this is through trial and error, but it's really about taking care of just being active and not being passive in the face of your daily life. So if you let it go, it's going to be other people's priority that take over. So it's really about I'm choosing to do this. And at the end of the week or the month, you reflect on it. That was a bit too much training. I need to take some rest. Then you might think that was a bit too much rest. I need to do a bit more this or that, a bit more work, a bit more. But at least you make a choice, a conscious decision to do more or less of X, Y, Z, and then you actually do it. Because everybody just starts, having those intentions. Oh, I should rest more. Then they don't do it. And after 3 months, you're back to square one because you haven't actually tried. So actually make a commitment with a time, horizon. Then you finish it. Then you review and then you adjust to find that balance that you're talking about.
That's powerful. I think the time frame is very powerful. Every time I try to do something, I ended up doing it more of the time because I set a time frame. So for example, I think in 2017, I tried to run before the sun for 30 days, and then it became a habit somehow. Even if I'm not doing that much today, but for a long time I was doing it. Last year I wanted to quit alcohol for 4 months, and I ended up like, I don't drink alcohol anymore. So time frame and adjusting is very powerful. But there is something that came into mind for me is based on the answer. When do you know it's the right time to take a break, where it could be interpreted as an excuse? How do you know?
So again, that's trial and error, right? At the end of the book, there's a whole chapter about the excuses. So you know what's an excuse and what's not, if you're honest with yourself at least, and with your commitment partner. That's the whole idea again in the book, to not be alone in choosing that. And sometimes there's an excuses that's going to be legit. And sometimes if you look at yourself and it's easy sometimes to lie to yourself, a bit less to somebody that you care about. So let's say you don't go to the gym one day, and then deep down, is it because and you tell yourself it's because you were too tired? Is it because you were a bit tired and a bit lazy, and then you started scrolling, and after half an hour you get even more lazy, and then you don't want to go, and you feel like, no, but I'm a bit cold, I have a cold, I'm a bit tired, and sure. Or is it that really you had an issue? If you have like a high fever or something and you really cannot go. So then if you were to give your word to a dear friend of yours, and then you go tell them at the end, somebody that you truly care about, are you willing to tell them, yeah, no, I was sick, I really couldn't go? Or are you going to look at them and basically say, no, I was really tired, but deep down there's this voice that says, come on, that's bullshit. You were not. And usually to yourself, it's easy to kind of lie. When it's somebody you care about, it's a bit harder. So try to picture, first of all, you can try by looking at yourself in the mirror. That helps already because you don't want to lie to yourself too much, but sometimes we still do. But then try to say that to somebody that you really care about. And to the person that you care about, you might actually say, yeah, no, I wasn't sick, but I was really tired. And they're going to be, oh, yeah, no, I understand. You had a bad day and it was tough, and they want to be nice to you. So they're going to be okay. But deep down, like, I wasn't necessarily, if you're saying that no, I was really sick, but you were not too honest. And that should kind of ring an alarm bell in your head. If it's not, then it's another problem.
Quick break from the podcast. I really hope you have as much fun as I do. First, thank you for being here. And if you enjoy it, please give it a follow and share this with a friend because it really helps a lot. Now, if you are a multi-passionate creator, an adventurer, or a visionary that feel called to express themselves fully, I'm opening few spots for my brand new one-on-one coaching that helps you build a brand that feel like you and attract aligned opportunities without copying trends, faking it, or just waiting for clarity to arrive. So whether you are still figuring out your voice or want to have more confidence expressing your story, we will co-create your personal brand and content with a sustainable rhythm that you can actually follow. Spots are limited, so follow me on Instagram and DM me P-O-D, to see if this is a great fit. All right, back to the podcast.
Yeah, self-checking, powerful. And talking about that, now that you just told me about everything about commitment now, I think, sometimes when you do a lot of things because you commit to different experience, adventures, races, things started to pile up into your life. So then you can tell that you have done this or done that. And yeah, maybe the achievement is not important, but there is one thing that I noticed, and sometimes people ask me, where do you get confidence? And I think commitment is exactly where you create confidence over time. It's like, okay, you align your words and your action, and it gives you the confirmation that you are able to do things. And when I was reading your book, it struck out to me very strongly because sometimes people like looking for tricks to be more confident, when the reality is just like to follow your word and your promises. And can you talk a bit about the damages about self-esteem and confidence when you break your commitment?
Yeah, that's definitely two things that go together here. As you mentioned first, piling up the different commitments or the intentions. The problem with this is that you end up with too many priorities. When you have too many priorities, they are no longer priorities, and you have to start dropping some. So you can commit to anything, but I usually tell people to not commit to too many things or too much time, just to have really the few priorities that are really important. The rest is going to take care of itself. You don't need to commit to going to work every day. If you have to go to work, you'll go to work. So you make a commitment about going to the gym or doing your reading on top of it. So I usually tell people to commit less, but to commit better. So when you commit to something, you really give your word. It's not just, yeah, I'll try. There's no try. You do or you do not. So that's one thing. Then the second thing about the confidence, this is brilliant. Many people think confidence is a prerequisite. It's like, oh yeah, when I'm confident enough, I'll do this, I'll try that. Or when I have the confidence, when I'm ready. It doesn't work that way. Confidence is not a prerequisite. It's not a requirement. It's a consequence. The more you act and the more you succeed, the more confidence you're going to get. Confidence is not the certainty that you're going to succeed. It's the willingness to try no matter what. I think it's Mel Robbins who mentioned that. It's really the confidence is the willingness to try no matter what. Oh, you might fail. Yeah, so what? I'm still going to try. That's what being confident is. It's not, thinking, no, there's no way I can fail. This is being cocky or arrogant. Like it's there is some confidence to that, but it's way too far. This is not truly confidence. The confidence is being willing to try, even if you know you might fail. And the more you fail, the more you succeed, because you cannot fail indefinitely. The more you do, and especially if you learn from your mistakes, then that makes you one step closer to actually succeeding at whatever you do. And whenever you do succeed, then you get the confidence of knowing that, yep, I'm closer to succeeding again. So that really is the key there, to not look at it as a prerequisite, but as a consequence of just doing stuff. The more you do, and even small wins, they pile up. And then if you've had 8 small wins and 2 small failures, yeah, let's try another action, because I have 80% chance of getting another small win instead of a small fail.
Actions over like excuses and procrastination. I have a question about excuses that I wanted to ask you when I was listening to your answer. What is a common excuse that you hear a lot, and how do you overcome it?
I mean, there's one chapter in my book about the grand slam of excuses. Usually the sports lover, they kind of like this idea. The excuse lover, they like it a bit less. And there's 4 big excuses that explain that we don't keep a commitment. There's a billion different versions of them, but basically they usually come down to those 4. One is the lack of discipline and willpower. One is going to be the lack of motivation and energy. Like, oh no, I'm tired and I really don't feel motivated, or like it matters. You're not motivated to go to work or to pay your taxes, and yet you do it every day or every year because you're committed. Then one is about, forgetting. It's just the lack of attention. But then the absolute number one in that Grand Slam, when I'm giving a talk about the topic, it's always the one that comes first when I'm asking, the audience. It's been 100% of the time. I've been doing talks about this topic for 2 or 3 years. Every single time, it's the first one that comes up. I didn't have time. That's excuse number one. I don't have time. And there's a difference between saying I don't have time ahead of making a commitment, because then what that means is I'm not willing to make the time for it. And that's fine. I'd love to play the guitar, but I know I'm not very good at music. So it would take me 5 hours a day for like a year to maybe get half decent at it. I'm not willing to commit that kind of time. I'm not going to say I don't have time to play the guitar. I don't want to put in the time. However, when you make a commitment to go like, okay, I'm committing to reading half an hour a day. If you make a true commitment and not just an intention, that means you're willing to remove half an hour to put in your reading. So you cannot tell me at the end, after a few days, a few weeks, or a few months, oh no, I didn't have time. Yes, you did. When you committed, you make that calculation, and if you gave me your word, it meant you knew you would have the time. Half an hour, you do have the time. Now, either you choose not to commit and not to spend that time on it, fine. Or you make that commitment and then you choose to not respect it and to still do something else with your time than what you committed to. And this is a bit more of a problem. It means that it's not about your own self-confidence, more that I cannot trust you if you give me your word, but then you don't actually act on it.
Yeah, it all comes down to responsibility of the outcome, whether you did it or you didn't. And I like it. But now I'm thinking about, let's say I do the planning, I do the acting, and I'm literally doing it. And I have this bias that you talk in your book, and I think it's very powerful. And I just literally experienced it last week. Is the optimism bias. Because I'm a very optimistic person, I tend to think I have the idea, I think it's gonna be done very quickly, and then I not overthink, but I'm too optimistic about my actual ability to make the task done. And last week, I wanted to create 10 pieces of content during my last Friday. And look, I took the time. I did everything I could to create those 10 pieces of content because I literally committed. But then, of course, at the end of the day, I had other things planned and my life to go on with. And I just didn't make the 10. I make 6 or 7, I think. Mm-hmm. how can I avoid this to happen so that it doesn't damage too much of my self-confidence?
So 2 things there. Either you committed to too much, and in that case, you need to adjust when you realize like that's why I'm always telling people to start easy. So to start with, maybe next Friday, you just do 1. And then you do the next Friday, you do 2, and then 3. And then you see how much you're able to do in a week, for example. And then you know the maximum you've ever done before the weekend was 7. Then you cannot just go, I'm going to do 10. So the trial and error and starting small, it's always better to start small. I'm always asking people to under-promise and over-deliver. If you had told yourself, I need to do at least 5, and you had done 7, then you're pretty happy with yourself. Then you told yourself, I need to do 10, and you've done only 7. It's the same number. But then you end up with, damaging your confidence, thinking that, I can't trust myself because I'm not able to deliver. So always under-promise and over-deliver. So that's one thing. And that helps in not being too optimistic and too ambitious in what we're doing. Then the second point, what did you do after? You said you had other things to do on Friday evening or maybe Saturday. What did you do this weekend? Just give a couple examples.
Yeah, I actually committed to spend time with my girlfriend. So it was a non-negotiable of getting rid of this.
Okay. Now, if you had told your girlfriend, look, I give you my word, I need to do those 10, otherwise I have to cancel our weekend, then you would have done your 10. They would not have been as good as you wanted, maybe. It's like you have to kind of compromise on the quality if you just really go for the quantity. But then that would have worked because that would have been a real commitment, not just an intention. But here, no matter how motivated you were, doing 10 was just an intention, a strong intention, sure. And the proof is you've done 6 or 7, so it's great. But if you had made a real commitment, you would have done 10.
I love this. I love this. It's a... go ahead.
Yeah, on Friday morning, however, if we had talked and I would have asked you, are you really going to do your 10? Then, and putting your weekend at risk, then you would have been let me think. Can I actually... No, I'm probably going to do just 6 or 7. Because then that would have forced you to be a bit more realistic. If you know there's the weekend at stake, then you're not being too optimistic. The problem is that we tend to say yes to everything and to everyone, knowing that, I might not be able to do everything, but it's fine. So again, you overpromised to yourself and then you under-delivered.
It's very powerful because it's a great example of intention of commitment. And now that you're telling that to me, I realized that it was a powerful intention, but still an intention.
Yeah.
It wasn't a commitment. I was more committed to spending time with my girlfriend, which is also a commitment for me as we're going to have a baby in a few weeks. But this wasn't an intention. And you're talking about compromising or putting at risk my weekend. Can you tell me a bit more about the power of using that as a way to really get committed to what you want to do?
Yeah, so in everything that we do, and that's another help in figuring out whether it's a good excuses or bad excuses whenever you can't do something. In everything that we have in life, it's all about competing commitments. So I'm going to give you an example. I want to go to the gym. If I don't make this commitment, I have 2 intentions, or let's say competing intentions rather than commitment. I have 2 intentions. The first one is to go to the gym, but then on the day where I'm supposed to go, I have another intention, which is staying on the couch because it's pretty comfy and I have my TV show to watch and I got my popcorn on the side. And so I got the 2 intentions. And they can be summed up as 1, going to the gym, 2, not going to the gym. Everything that we do is really binary. Either you do or you don't. Everything. There's not a single thing in your life that is not binary. When it feels like having 5 options, you want to go somewhere. You can take the bus, the bike, the plane, or the train. It feels like it's 4 options. No, it's not. It's 4 times 2 options. It's either you take the bike or you take not the bike, which is all 3 other ones. Then you take the bus or you take not the bus. So everything is really binary. So that's what really makes the difference. When you get to a point like either I do or I don't. And that's the whole point of commitment, where either you're going to do what you said you will do, or you will do the alternative. So by putting an alternative that is more attractive, then of course you're going to choose the alternative. I could either go to the gym, or I could just stay home. I have some ice cream and I have a very comfy, couch. And why would I go to the freaking gym? However, if I tell my girlfriend, hey, look, we're supposed to go to dinner together at the restaurant. If I don't go to the gym, I'm canceling on our date. First of all, then I won't have the dinner. And on top of it, she will be disappointed at me or angry at me, or she'll be mad, and rightfully so. So then what happens? Going to the gym or not going to the gym? If there's no consequences, I'm not going to go to the gym. However, if that means I have to cancel and disappoint my girlfriend and myself because I wanted to go to the restaurant and ideally I also wanted to go to the gym, then the question becomes super easy. So everything is binary. Go to the gym or you don't. And if you realize every time I have this hesitation, I end up not going, well, then it's easy. Just put more weight on the side of going to the gym. Add some reasons. If you truly want that pizza, you say, I'll get the pizza on my way back from half an hour at the gym. Could be anything. But the idea is everything is binary. Either you do or you don't. So if you want to make sure that you do X, give it the weight and the value and the importance that makes it feel better than Y or Z. It's incredibly easy. Everything is binary. You do or you don't.
I'm going to have a question about this binary thing in a couple minutes. But just what you said made me think about moments in my backpacking trip through Switzerland. I remember I was in the opposite side of Switzerland. I think I've been riding for 7 days in a row. And I had a day where I had to do 120 kilometers. And half day through, I was already exhausted. I still have 60 kilometers to reach the city of Lucerne, where I was supposed to stay. But I was empty. And I just remember, to motivate me, I had this picture of a pizza. I was like, okay, let's play a game here. If I make it to Lucerne, fine. I get my pizza. I'm going to eat it. I'm going to take a beer with it if I want to. I'm going to make myself a real good night with a pizza. But if I don't, no pizza. And actually, it just helped me way through the last couple of kilometers to actually reach my destination. And hearing you about that just showed me that the power of playing a bit of games in your head with either something you get rid of, or you disappoint somebody, or you reward yourself with something is really powerful. And I love that.
Yeah. It's often linked to, the carrot and the sticks, but there's a big difference. And I mentioned that in my book, when giving the key of the method. It's not the same as in when you have the carrot and the sticks, when, to make a donkey move, for example, it's an external thing. So, of course, you can have somebody do something by giving them a punishment or a reward if they actually do it. Sure. And in a way, it can work with yourself to some extent, but usually it doesn't, because you're not a donkey, you're not a kid. You don't want to treat yourself like you're something like this, not giving you a stupid reward or punishment, doesn't matter. And it's even counterproductive, right? But the point is to really understand what happens to your brain when you do commit to something. When you have the carrot and the sticks, again, it's binary. There's no other option. So you make your donkey choose. And then they start committing to, I got to move if I want to get my carrot. So it's kind of the same thing here. It's not really about the pizza. It's about simulating, putting yourself in a situation where you are committed. Where you tell yourself, I don't have a choice. But I tend to say, I don't have a choice because it's my choice. When you say you want to go to the gym, nobody's forcing you. But people who have the discipline and who end up going to the gym every day, they're going to tell you, nope, I don't have a choice. Of course they do. They can also just not go. They always do have a choice. But they put themselves in that situation where, no, I don't have a choice. Because then if they skip, some people, a bit on the extreme side of things, they might be thinking, no, if I'm skipping one, I'm ruining everything I've done for a month. Or if I'm skipping one workout, I may not qualify for the Olympics, for an Olympian athlete, for example. Or if I skip one workout, I'm worthless. People who have their view and their worth of themselves tied to going to the gym. That's not necessarily healthy, but that's another conversation. At least they're committed. So no matter what, either you are committed to doing something or you're not. And the discipline and the willpower, those are just illusions. They're just consequences of a true commitment. If you are fully committed, you're going to be fully disciplined. If you are 50% committed, you're going to be only 50% disciplined. And if it feels like you're only 20% disciplined, it means that you were just 20% committed. I'm usually, I give an example quite often with people who say they're not a morning person. They struggle waking up in the morning. And oh no, there's no way I can wake up at 5 a.m. There's just no way, impossible. I say, yeah, okay, sure. What if there's the fire alarm ringing at your place at 5 a.m.? Are you going to wake up or are you going to stay in bed and just burn and say, yeah, no, I'm not a morning person? Everybody goes, well, of course. Well, here you go. I thought you couldn't wake up. So what that truly means is I can't wake up at 5 a.m. unless I'm committed to do so. And having the fire alarm, that's a good commitment. If you have a plane at 7 a.m. and you have to be at 5 at the airport, you're going to wake up at 4, no problem. Because if you miss your planes, you don't have another one, or you don't get refunded, or that's easy. But then when it's just to go to the gym, no, I'm not a morning person, I can't do it. But yesterday you took your plane at 4 a.m., that was not a problem. So it really is about whether you are committed or not to what you want to do. And when you have a plane, I will be waking up tomorrow at 4 and I'll go to the airport. However, when it's the gym, it's like, yeah, I will try to wake up at 4 and go to the airport. I'll go to the gym. And that word, that try, what that means is I'm not as committed as I am to the plane at the airport. So in the morning, when you have the weight of having a short night and maybe you're in the middle of a comfy bed with a blanket and against the weight of all of that, there's no way. If you're not 100% committed, you're going to stay in bed.
I have one more question about commitments. Commitment sometimes can be seen as a negative word. How do we bring the fun into commitment?
How is it in negative? Oh, yeah, okay. Maybe negative as in it's another constraint. Is that what you mean? Yeah, so if you don't want to do it, don't do it. I'm a free thinker. I'm a free doer. Nobody can make me commit to doing something I don't want to do. Committing to something is freeing. It's liberating. It's not another constraint. When you commit to doing your reading, for example, if you don't want to read, don't fucking read. I don't care. And you shouldn't care either. Don't force yourself because people say, oh, the billionaires, they're reading a book a month. I don't care. Do what is important for you. Now, if you're saying that you want to do your reading or do your yoga or go to the gym, whatever it is, and you make that one of your priorities, that's freeing. How is it freeing? It's freeing because it allows you to say no to anything else that's less important. So if you're supposed to be reading your book every single day from 6 p.m. to 6:30, when your boss or your client or your colleague is saying, oh, you need to stay at work after 6, you're like, nope, that's freeing. Like, nope, I can't. I have another commitment. You don't have to say that I'm going to read. Nope, I have another commitment. If you have a doctor appointment at 6 p.m. and it takes 3 months to get the appointment, you're going to leave on time for work to get to the appointment. So a commitment is like making an appointment with yourself. And if you make a true appointment every single day at 6 p.m. from 6 to 6:30 to read for half an hour, then nothing can get you out of it. So that's freeing because then, nope, everything else becomes easy. Oh yeah, but I have this, my boss who wants me to stay late. And then there's my colleague who says, hey, let's go have a drink. And then there's, nope, none of that exists. I can say no with a smile. It's incredibly easy. The same way that you're asking an Olympian, oh, come on, go have some beer with us. Nope, I can't. I'm waking up at 4 a.m. to go to the gym. It's not a problem. Of course, sometimes they're like, I wish I could stay. And then getting back to your question from before about finding the balance, then maybe even for an Olympian, maybe they could be thinking, okay, one night a week, I can go and have a beer, and then I move my morning session to a lunchtime session, workout once a week, maybe not. But then they can find that balance. If it's too much and, like you said, not fun, and they feel like they're getting sick of their training because they haven't seen their friends in a month, then it's about finding that intention and like, is training every single day the right commitment to make? Maybe training 6 days a week instead of 7 is a better commitment. So that's how you can maybe put some fun and find that balance that we were talking about.
I love that. It's definitely about finding the balance, readjusting your commitment, putting a time frame, and just like adjusting as you go. And that's what I like. It's not like a hard committed goal or habit that you absolutely have to do for the rest of your life. It's like, okay, let's try this for 30 days, adjust. Okay, no, maybe not 7 days a week of training, maybe 5 and 2 days out, something like that. And I love that approach. It's like, it's not rigid as some people might think about a commitment. So yeah, your book is very powerful. It's called You Have My Words. It's everything we talked about is in the book in more details. I definitely recommend anybody to read it, especially adventurers and creators who want to start their quest. It will require you to commit to what you want to do and want to create. And I think it's a powerful resource to have. So I definitely refer the book in the show notes so people can check it out and buy it if they want to. And I want now to, for the last part of the interview, move a bit more towards your personal experience with ultra running and adventure in a broad sense. But before to dive more into like trail running and maybe your own transition, professional transition, I see like writing a book, like running a race. So how did it compare for you between your race as an ultra trailer and writing this book?
Yeah, it's definitely similar, especially with an ultra race. I'm someone who doesn't have any problem getting excited about something at the beginning. I'm very passionate about plenty of things. So having the idea and like the creative idea, this is something that I loved. I have no problem with this. So having the idea, starting the book, building the structure of the book, is like getting to the start line and doing the first few kilometers. This is fine. This is the easy part. And this is the fun part. And like, okay, this is done. I've put the ideas, again, the structure. I know what I want to put in the chapter, etc. And then comes the second part, where it's actually about having to write down everything and to review and review and review and try to shorten and rephrase and try to put example and get feedback from people and then change it. And there's so much work that goes into this. And it's not the exciting part necessarily, at least not for me. Some people like different part of the process. That the funny thing is, I had to use my own method about commitment to help me finish the book. I mentioned that towards the end, actually, where I had the book, most of it was done, but not everything. And not most of it. Again, the structure and all the ideas. I knew what I wanted to write. I had maybe the 30 chapters that were all written. I mean, all the titles, and I knew what to put in there. But I spent the whole summer, it was a couple of years ago, the whole summer for 3 months saying, yeah, I'm currently writing a book. And at some point I stopped myself. I'm like, cut the crap. You're saying you're currently writing a book, but it's been 3 months or 4 months and I hadn't written a single word. Because I had my structure, I had everything, but I was not actually writing it. And then I said, all right, I'm going to commit. So I made a commitment. That was at the end of October. I said, I made a commitment. From November 1st until whenever the book is finished, I need to write at least 7 hours a week. 1 hour per day, but in average over the week. I had to write at least 7. So that's doable. I made it a priority. Most weeks I would end up writing much more than that. When I got started, it was fine. But then there was the actually getting started. That was really, really tricky. A little bit like going for one small training before the race. It's just all the detail, kind of busy work that you have to do. That's what's a bit more painful. But that's where you need to commit. It's easy to get to the start line and to sign up to a race, but then you need to put in the work. And So yeah, for that it was pretty funny that I had to commit and use my own method, but then 2 months later the book was finished.
Yeah. Putting the steps in one after the other is exactly what I think of when I think about adventure, but also like doing tasks like writing a book, starting a project, posting content regularly online. And yeah, so you basically put your method into practice to your own book. Now let's talk a bit about ultra running. The first question that I have is like, how did you get started with this? Because I mean, when you think about running or doing sports or anything, yeah, maybe you run a half marathon, maybe you just like run a 10 kilometers race. But how do you end up like running 330 kilometers for 5 days in the mountains?
I mean, there's several reasons why you can be running, but basically there's usually two, and that's true for any type of sports. First one is either for fun, just to feel good and be out there. Could be in the mountain, could be on the road, just running for the sake of running. And then, again, that's true with any other sport or any other type of hobby or passion. And then the other dimension is to try and improve, to get better at something, to master something. So there's the fun part, and you can have a bit of both, obviously. But then looking at how to improve. If you want to improve when you start running 10K, half marathon, that's how I started, then there are different ways. There's two different ways to improve and get better as a runner. Either you can go faster or you can go longer, with the endurance. And the secret, it seems impressive when people run super long, etc. But usually that's the option of the lazy people. Because when you want to get faster, you need to do short workout, really hard, really high interval-based workout that are extremely tiring. And you need the consistency of going every time. And that's usually harder. The training is much harder at the beginning. So it's much easier to actually go longer because it feels like every training is fun. You just go easy for 2 hours and 3 hours and 4 hours, and you go like this. And then when you've done a 10K, you can either decide, I need to get better at 10K, or, can I do more maybe? Half marathon. And it started like this for me. It's like, can I do more? I don't know. I really don't know. And that's part of the adventure, is not knowing what's going to happen, not knowing. When you do a 10K and you want to improve on 10K, that's not an adventure. And that's fine. That's competition, that's mastery, and that some people are incredibly fast, but it's not adventure. An adventure means there's a lot of moving parts, something that you don't know what's going to happen. You know, what's the finish point? You don't. So when you start a race that you haven't done before in terms of distance, it really is an adventure because you don't know, am I able to do that? So you start with 10K, then 20K, then a marathon, then going a bit further. And at some point, I realized also that I got better. And then I got to a point where I could do the long races, but also perform and be really good at it. And then I ended up having to go through what I avoided at the beginning, which is the speed work. Because even if you're good at long distance, if you want to be the best, you need to put in some work and some speed work. So even if it's a bit of a different modality than for 10K or something in track and field, now I'm still putting in a lot of speed work. So I can't go around it because now I'm trying to really build both the endurance and the speed. And I got to a point where there's no doubt about being able to go longer. I've done races up to 500 kilometers. Can I do a 800 kilometer race? Sure. 2,000 kilometers? Sure. It's the same thing. Once you've done that for several days, if you want to run 3 days or run 10 days or run 20 days, it's the same. You get to a point where, again, we talked about the confidence.
Really?
Yeah. You know, it doesn't mean it's a guarantee that's going to work. You can have problems. That's an adventure. So they can have problem. I'm going to do the Tour des Géants, the big race I'm doing next month. It's going to be the fourth time. Maybe I'm not going to finish because it's still, it is hard in itself and anything can happen. But I know that I can. And once you get to that level, we talked about confidence, I can be sure that I will finish, but I know that I can. If I have to start tomorrow a 3,000 kilometer race, I know I can finish. I may not, but I know I can. And that changes everything in how you view life. in general, because nothing seems impossible. There's no more limit. You stop putting yourself limiting beliefs, because deep down, you can do virtually anything. It might take me more time. I might slow down. I might struggle, but I'll get to the end. And if I don't, I will have given my best, and I will have to adjust, and I can come back next year and then finish it. The whole mindset changes once you've faced the unknown and the discomfort enough. Then you get comfortable with it. And that's the true confidence, where it's like, yeah, I'm going to try anything. Doesn't matter if I succeed or not. I'll try.
And how do you mentally prepare for such a race? Let's say you want to prepare for Tour de Géants, which is a big race, or one of the biggest races that you have done, like maybe over 500 kilometers. How do you mentally prepare for that? Because you just talked about the mindset and the confidence, but how do you practically do that?
Same thing as for life. Prepare for everything going to shit. When you're doing a marathon or anything shorter, and a 100-meter sprint, for example, that we see on TV a lot, they prepare physically to make sure that on the day everything goes smoothly and perfectly. If it's short enough and in a very controlled environment, even a marathon, it's 2 hours, but you see they control absolutely everything. The road is perfectly flat, and it's just so they're preparing for it to go well. The day if it doesn't go well, anyway, it is so competitive that they're not going to win. So somebody else is going to have a great day. Now, for anything like an ultra running race, you cannot hope, and you can hope, but you cannot expect everything to go well. That's just not, that's unrealistic. So something's not going to go well. You don't know, maybe it's going to be your body, maybe it's going to be the weather, maybe it's going to be the terrain, something you eat, something, it doesn't matter. A lot, not just one, but a lot of things are likely to go wrong. So it really is about preparing this. So you can anticipate some of it. Try to have contingency plan. If that happens, I'm going to do this. If this happens, I'm going to do that. If that happens, sure. But you cannot anticipate everything. So you need to, first of all, be okay with the discomfort in general, and almost be expecting it. And when you're expecting things to go well, the risk is if they don't go well, then you're lost. You don't know what to do. Now, if you're expecting things to not go well, when they eventually go to shit, you're fine. You're like, yep, I expected that. Now let's troubleshoot, problem solve, and get out of here.
When you are running for 40 hours and everything hurts and everything goes even beyond what you expected to be the worst that could have happened, how do you keep going? What dialogue happens in your head?
Commitment. You have two options.
But
it's binary. Either you continue or you quit. What do you want to do?
But you just said something that I found very interesting just before that question. You said, I have the confidence to know that I can run for 500, 1,000 or 3,000 kilometers race. And I can throw myself into this. And I can give you my best and maybe not finish it, even if I know I have the confidence. So is my question then, you know you can finish it, but you still don't finish it. So is it important to finish the race or not?
Depends on your commitment. Again, some people might, lots of people quit. Basically, when you quit a race and when you quit anything in life, if you quit a project, if you quit, at work, if you quit a relationship, the question is, why did you quit? And then are you going to regret it or not? And there's quitting because you're being either kind of weak or not committed enough. And then at the moment, you let that kind of deter you from what's really important. And then you go back and think, oh, shoot, I should have continued. Sometimes the minute you get out and like, oh, no, I made a mistake. I was in a minute of, absence, or I don't know. And I made a mistake and I should have continued. And there are times where, if you get really injured, if you're a bit tired, we get back to the same thing. Is it an excuse, or is it, if it's a long race like this, if you're tired and you struggle, go to sleep. We can sleep during those long races. So go to sleep for like 3 hours. That's what I did last year. I wanted to quit. I went to sleep because I'm screwed. in that big race, Tour des Géants. And I went to sleep for like 7 hours. In my mind, it was, no, I'm going to quit. And then I woke up and I'm like, no, I can't quit. My parents are here, my friends, my girlfriend. Just for them, I need to continue. So then, I went out and continued. But it really is. So then my commitment was to get to the finish line. Why? Initially it was to win the race. And then it became to not quit the race because they were there and just for me in general. So I didn't want to quit. Now, if I had been seriously injured or if there was any danger in me continuing, then I would have stopped. Because again, self-care, self-love, just being able to know that's a competing commitment. The competing commitment is staying healthy. So then it's not just like, oh, you quit or you continue. No, then it becomes either I continue and risk my health or I protect my health. And then obviously that's always going to be the priority. So screw any race if I feel like I can damage my health. However, if it's in a race where I'm like, oh, I might have a little bit of a tendonitis or something, but I can still finish and it's not too serious, yeah, then I might continue. If it's 20K left on the tendonitis or anything, that even a sprain on an ankle, if I sprain my ankle seriously at 20K before the finish, I'm going to walk to the finish. If I sprain my ankle 200K from the finish, I'm going to say, no, I need to stop because I can actually make some real damage. So again, it's always about finding that balance and that competing commitment. But it looks like, oh, there's plenty of options. I can continue, but with a bandage, or maybe I can take some rest. Like, no, it's just always two options. Do I continue or do I stop? And if I continue, then you have another binary option. Do I take a nap now to try and recover, or do I not take a nap? You choose to not take a nap. Okay, do I eat something or do I not eat something? So everything is really binary, but there's always yes, no. And we like to pollute a little bit our thinking with, oh yeah, but I could eat or I could drink or I could take a break. Oh, I have 20 options. And then we have so many options that we don't do anything. No, take them one by one. Everything is binary. Do something or do not. So there's no need to consider, oh, what am I going to eat if you're planning on quitting the race? So first of all, do I quit? Do I continue? No, I continue. Okay, fine. So that question is out of the picture now. Now, I want to continue. What should I do? I have a problem here. Okay. Do I need to continue running now or do I need to fix this problem before going? No, I feel like it can be serious, so I need to fix the problem. All right, fine. So then you can remove your bag, you stay there, and you're like, I'm not leaving that place until I fix the problem. But everything is really binary. You do something or you don't. And based on your commitment, that allows you to know whether, yep, that's the right direction or I'm going the other way.
When I listen to you, it does take something that we haven't talked about yet, is self-awareness and knowing when to quit and when not to quit and keep going. And I think it requires a deep sense of knowing yourself and your limits. But I've seen a lot of people, myself included, when I'm running or doing something, sometimes we just go too far. How can we avoid that?
What does that mean, going too far?
What I mean by that, for example, like if I take back the example you said about injuries, I'm pretty sure you have experienced that before as well as a runner, that where you keep pushing because you stay, maybe you said you were committed, but you went too far because you just made things worse by getting injured in a deeper way that if you have stopped before. So my point is, your self-awareness now helps you do that better. But how do I know exactly how to use or develop that self-awareness to know exactly when to stop when I'm in this situation when this is too much?
It's exactly like the confidence. Is basically what you're asking is how do I know whether it's a mistake or not? The only way to recognize a mistake is to make the mistakes in the first place. Or at least, you can always prepare and learn from other people and learning from other people's experience and what seems to be a mistake so that you can prepare and think, maybe that's a bad idea, of course. But at the end of the day, you need to have your own experience. And if you go through life thinking, I'm afraid I might make a mistake, then we're going back to the lack of confidence and you're not willing to try. So basically, the first time where you might have a bit of a pain, but you're not too sure, confidence means, well, I'll try and we'll see. And most often not, if you feel like I should be able to go, if you end up having a problem, it's not going to be a broken leg. It might be just I went a bit too far. Then if you're really thinking, that's really a bad idea, then maybe it's better to stop. But then what you do is you think back to the last time you had an issue like this. And sometimes, yeah, you make a mistake because you don't know. Maybe some people with, in ultra running, they end up peeing blood almost. They're peeing red or they're peeing brown and sometimes they're like, oh, I guess not worried. No, for me, if I'm ever peeing blood during a race, I'm going to be like, nope, I'm going to go see a doctor. It doesn't mean I quit immediately, but I'm asking the doctor and I see what's up, because I've heard of too many accidents where people actually, and then even in terms of common sense, you stop being red, you're like, not good. But then some people kept going, and I heard about cases of people who got in serious trouble. So I'm not going to do it. So again, this is really about the experience, and the more you have, and the more mistakes you make, and the more you can recognize them and avoid them in the future. That's what I meant when I say the more you fail, the more you're likely to succeed later.
I love this. I have just a couple more questions before we wrap this up. Do you think that commitment is the same muscle in ultra running and life?
Yeah. Commitment is everything that we do in life is about commitment for me. Is either, again, it's every single choice you make, every single one. You want a glass of water or not? It's like, do you commit to getting that glass of water? Because you're thirsty. If you have your water next to you, you're going to drink it. If you're just the same level of thirsty, but the bottle of water is in the other room, you might not drink it. Now, if you're very thirsty, you're going to drink it. Now, if you're extremely thirsty, but there's no water at home and you don't have drinking water, you're going to get out and go to the shop and get some water. It's just about the level of commitment that you have towards what you want to do. And like, oh, I'm thirsty, I'd like a drink. But I'm not that thirsty and I don't need that much. I need to get up or get out of my bed, which is really comfy, and then have to go to the kitchen, turn on the light, take a glass. Well, screw this, I'm not drinking. You had the intention of drinking a glass of water, but your level of commitment was not the same. And that's fine in that case. When you see things like this, everything becomes kind of black and white, and it's super easy, really binary. Either it's important enough and I commit, or not. And that's true with absolutely everything that we do in life, in work, in sports, in relationships. That's why in the second part of my book is all the application, and you see like almost everything's in there. Fighting addictions and following your hobbies, commitment in your relationship, commitment with your children, for you who's going to have a kid soon. There's plenty of things. Everything is about just living in line with how you want to live. And the only thing to do so is to commit. Otherwise, we're in autopilot. And that could be fine for many people. Just many people also realize when they're towards the end of their life, like, oh, shit, I was on autopilot my whole life and I didn't live half of my dreams, and I forgot to do this and that. And that's a bit sad.
That's powerful. I love how you translate your sense of adventure and ultra running and use what you've learned from that experience, which is definitely about commitment, as we talked about for more than an hour now, and how you translate that into every area of life. And that's why I had so much pleasure to read your book, because it wasn't just about committing to changing a habit. It was just like changing how you talk with people, how you behave in a certain situation, how you want to show up as a dad for me in a few weeks. And I really appreciate that. And I just want to take a moment now before I ask a final question to acknowledge your work, your experience, and your sense of adventure. And thank you so much for sharing this through your book here on the podcast, but also online, as you just keep experiencing adventure and bringing it back to this sense of commitment.
Yeah, there's one thing that I might add to this is when you start seeing the world like this, it's scary because you have to take responsibility. When you start looking at it as I'm committed or I'm not, that means every single thing you do or don't do is your choice and your responsibility. People say, no, I don't have time, because I don't have time to exercise because I have my kid. No, they make a choice to spend all their time with the kid and not to exercise, for example. I'm not saying things are easier and you haven't understood now that I'm not saying do more and more and more. Quite the opposite. Just do what's important to you. And there's no excuses. If you don't have the life that you want to do, if you don't have every single minute of your day that's not how you want it, it's your responsibility. And it's pretty scary because there's nothing else. You can't rely on anything else like, oh yeah, but that's because, no. It's because you did not commit. And that's quite scary. So at the end of the book, I'm asking and offering people to make a commitment. And more than offering, actually, I'm really asking at the start, basically saying, if you read that whole thing and you end up just putting it back in the bookstore and the bookshelf, thinking, oh yeah, that was really interesting, but you did not commit, kind of a waste of time. So I'm glad to know that you've loved the book. But then the question obviously is, what are you committing to? No matter how small. But what are you changing in your life? Maybe now with a kid but what are you committing to that would make your life even just 1% more in line with what you want?
Answer for that question is definitely around fatherhood and being a parent for me, as it's going to be what I call a new adventure. For me, it's going to be exciting. It's going to be exhausting. And like you said, in your races, things going to turn to shit per se, and I'm gonna have to adapt, and that's what I love so much.
Quite literally, for the first few years, with the diapers and everything. So
literally, quite literally, and that's what I love about that mindset that you have as well, and that I want to talk more about online. Is really this mindset of take everything as an adventure. There's a lot of unknowns. There's gonna be a lot of ups and downs in life, and it goes back to my personal story about losing my dad to suicide unexpectedly, and that taught me that lesson that things can turn very bad at any moment. So let's enjoy the ride, let's accept the lows and the highs, and just your mindset about ultra running and commitment is exactly in line with that. And that's why I want to thank you for your mission and for your message and for what you put out into the world. So thank you a lot for that, Martin.
And thank you for your
Where
trust.
can people find more about? Where can people find more about you online if they want to follow your journey, your races, and your messages?
Name is Martin Perrier, like the sparkling water, although it's not the same family. And you can find me on my website, on Instagram, LinkedIn, Strava for people who are into sports. I'm on all the social media at Martin Perrier. And I'm trying to make as much link between the ultra running, the commitment, which is the key there, and which is shared in the professional world, in the personal world. So trying to share as much as possible about this topic. That's again my life's purpose.
I love it. I'll put every link in the show notes so that people can find more about you online if they want to follow your journey. I have a final question in this podcast, and I know you answered it already, but I wanted to ask you again. Adventure, what does it mean to you?
Is getting on the way without knowing how it's going to finish. And so many people don't move until they know for sure where they're going to land. For me, that's not an adventure. And it's fine. You can have it's just, for me, something is missing. In a life without adventure, without the unknown. It doesn't mean you have to go to the danger. I didn't talk about danger, right? Just not knowing what happens. Yeah, I'll try. Let's take a one-way ticket. Just not knowing when you're coming back. That's already an adventure. Just putting some unknown and trying to let go of the control and let's adjust along the way. I think for me, that's the key.
That was Martin Perrier. That was a beautiful way to end the podcast. Thank you, Martin, and see you guys very soon. Bye.